For centuries, we've been sold this one single story, that it was a dark, brutal time where humanity basically hit the pause button for 1,000 years. But today, we're going to take a look at the actual evidence and completely shatter that story.
Yeah, you know the image I'm talking about. It's plastered all over Hollywood and pop culture. Peasants covered in mud, disease running rampant, total ignorance, and a life that was just nasty, brutish, and most of all, short. Everyone dying when they were, 30?
But what if I told you that pretty much every fact you think you know about medieval life is completely wrong? The truth, as we're about to see, is way more complex and honestly a lot more interesting.
Okay, let's start with the biggest myth of them all, life expectancy. There's this one number you've probably heard 1,000 times, a number that has totally defined how we see this entire era.
30. The average life expectancy was 30. It's in textbooks, it's in documentaries, and it paints this bleak picture of adults just dropping dead in their prime. But this number, it's hiding a really tragic secret. See, here's the statistical trick. That average of 30 gets dragged way, way down by an absolutely horrifying infant and child mortality rate. We're talking about roughly half of all people dying before they even reached adulthood. It wasn't that 35-year-olds were dropping dead, it's that so many children never even got a chance to grow up. The reality is, if you could just make it past those incredibly dangerous first few years of childhood, your life expectancy shot up dramatically and actually becomes remarkably similar to ours today. The archaeological evidence is filled with skeletons of people who lived long, full lives into their 60s, 70s, and even their 80s.
Okay, so they lived longer than we thought, but what about their physical shape? Weren't they all just tiny, weak, and malnourished from a terrible diet? Well, not quite.
Nope, wrong again. When archaeologists actually measure the skeletons they dig up, they find that medieval people were, on average, about the same height as we are today. But it gets even more impressive when you start to look at some of the specialists. Just take the legendary English longbowmen. Their skeletons tell an absolutely incredible story. We're seeing extreme muscle development, with the bones in their arms and shoulders literally twisted and deformed by the sheer power it took to draw a 150-pound warbow day after day for years. These were not some scrawny, malnourished peasants. These were highly developed specialists. For all intents and purposes, they were medieval athletes. All right, this next myth is the one that really drives historians crazy. It's the whole idea that for 1,000 years, humanity just forgot how to think. That there was no progress, no innovation, just darkness. In reality, the medieval period was an era of intellectual explosion. All that ancient knowledge from Greece and Rome, it wasn't lost. It was being rediscovered and translated. Universities, the same kinds of institutions we have today, were founded all across Europe, creating this vibrant exchange of ideas between Christian, Muslim, and Jewish scholars. But here is probably the most mind-blowing innovation. In 14th century Italy, merchants came up with this genius system to fund massive trading voyages. They'd pool their money together and then create documents that represented a share, of the potential profits. That's right, share ownership, joint stock companies, the very foundations of the modern stock market and our entire economic system were born in the so-called Dark Ages. Not so dark after all, huh?
Okay, finally, let's tackle the image of everyday life. You know the one. Everyone caked in mud, wearing drab brown rags, and living in absolute filth.
Believe it or not, a lot of medieval towns had cleanliness laws. I'm serious. We have actual court documents showing people getting sued just for not sweeping the street in front of their own house. They were surprisingly keen on keeping things neat and tidy. And what about what they wore? Oh, forget the dull brown stereotype. Medieval people loved color. They used all these sophisticated natural dyes to create a world filled with vibrant clothing. And the difference between the myth and the reality is just striking. I mean, this says it all, right? The Middle Ages weren't a world of brown and gray. They were bursting with color,
from the clothes people wore every day to the brilliant decorations they painted inside their churches and castles.
So, after all that, what have we actually learned? Well, the big point is that the image we've all been sold is just a caricature. It's a funhouse mirror version of a really complex and dynamic period of history. The reality is, medieval people lived long lives if they just survived childhood. They were strong, they were healthy, and they were incredibly innovative, laying the groundwork for our entire modern world. And they did it all in a world that was far cleaner and more colorful than we ever imagined.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The past is a far stranger and more sophisticated place than we often give it credit for. If this common, everyday story is a total myth, what other historical facts might just be convenient fictions? The truth is out there, just waiting to be rediscovered.